it's two approaches to the demonic influence, and they both fail. You have the Annie's approach, which is an unawareness. So that would be a kind of ignorance of one's dark side. If you want to liken this to the daemon idea, which I think it's a really good vehicle for analyzing that idea. You have Annie as a normal person keeping her, but still has this issue with the sleepwalking and where she's almost done horrific things. And these two parts of herself stay separate. Then you have Peter, who is essentially fighting this demon, but is aware that it's trying to take over, but he resists it. So both of these approaches fail. And it's not, to say that, they needed to accept it. But if you look at it from this idea of the daemon, of like a larger idea of integrating the negative of the personality, you wouldn't take those approaches. So you both of these approaches, to either fight against that or to be ignorant of it, both yield the same result, which is possession by that force. And so that's when the daemon, the Greek daemon, becomes destructive. When the person is ignorant of it or against it, avoidant of it, these both allow for the daemon to take a negative control of the person. And that was the idea of partially the idea of ritual madness in Greek culture. So we've talked about this before. I don't remember which episode we brought up the Dionysian cult, but there was I forget who wrote about it. Might have been Socrates, might not, but I think it might have been Socrates that was saying that the importance of that ritual is that, people go crazy. They allow for madness in that controlled sphere so that madness does not take control of them in a more risky situation once they're back in society. And that's the same idea of the daemon, that you try to harness it for good rather than ignoring it or running from it and then having it come after you in a more destructive way. It's a really interesting idea because it's something that everybody deals with. We all deal with possession of our lesser selves, by our lesser selves rather. So you become possessed by your anger. You can become possessed by your fear, by your greed, by your pride, your flaws as an individual, whatever that is. When you get to a really bad part of it, that's almost, you lose control over your more rational self and you can become possessed by that. I mean, if anybody's ever been like, that angry or whatever, when you've gone too far, or, this can also happen in infatuation for a person that gets, infatuated with a partner, but then if they somehow get triggered by that partner or something goes wrong, or even if they just feel so obsessive about that partner, that you can lose a bit of touch with the more balanced version of your personality and you become possessed by this passion. It's a similar idea.
I find it interesting that when you're describing that, you did something like this. You said your anger, your pride, your you listed off a bunch of different negative emotional states or characteristics, but you were defining it as a singular entity, yourself, having these qualities. And again, going back to the beginning of the podcast, I just think it's odd how we talk about this, that we don't talk about, you were just now talking about a unitary self, some sort of individual here that is dealing with this quality, that quality, this quality, that quality.
Do you think the Jungian breakdown of the personality is unitary? Would you say
no,
that?
I don't.
Okay.
And I'm not as familiar with his.
But that's kind of what I mean then, is so when I say your anger, all of this would fall under the idea of the shadow self, whatever, for what it's worth. It's just a very, I'm not saying that I don't, I'm not like an adherent too much of Jungian psychology, because it is more of in a way, a literary approach to the self. I think it's very much like a story, and that's why it's so gripping and understandable in many ways, because it, again, we can talk about like, you have depression, or you have whatever, anti-authority anger disorder. There's all these different disorders for every
what
little
is anti-authority anger
it's
disorder?
A thing. It's actually a thing. It's a kind of, I don't know, a mental illness or a behavioral problem. Usually it's for teenagers that
sounds like something that people just made up because they wanted their kids to be quiet.
Yeah, but it's real.
Anti-authority what?
Anti-authority personality disorder or something like that.
That can't be real.
It's real. It's actually real. It stuck with me because I thought it was kind of,
Oppositional defiant disorder is what I get.
Yeah.
It's a childhood mental health disorder that includes frequent and persistent anger, irritability, arguing, defiance.
And now we're getting into the discussion of whether there is harm in attributing every problematic manifestation of a personality to a mental health issue or some type of biological problem.
This is hard. This isn't in the notes. I'm going off the cuff here. Free form trying to figure this out, because there is a simplicity in believing that you got possessed by demons.
Yeah.
It's a little more simple. I mean, okay. If we were to characterize our current state of how we look at mental health and mental health care, half the country's on drugs to help them because they have mental health problems.
Yeah, and what is it, like 30% of prisoners report mental health problems. Like there's like a massive number of mental health people that are either homeless or incarcerated.
Sure, and I mean they have a good excuse. They have serious, like, objective problems happening to them. We had a story. Different cultures have had stories. The Greeks had their stories. The Christians have their stories, called the Christians. Different religions. And it's funny I say that, the Christians, because at this point in Western culture, we've lost track. I bet it probably freaked people out for me to read the Bible to some people. I felt a little weird about it, right? I was like,
we were like joking about it. Yeah. Like, you have your Bible verse, and
but that is the basis of a lot of Western culture. So we've lost all this, for better or for worse, probably somewhere in between.
And we've replaced it with science and secularism, which has brought us into great things. This is not, sure. It's like I always feel like I need to be like, settle down. It's not a contradiction or a condemnation of one or the other.
No, it's not. It's just.
But there's a cost.
Well, there's certainly a cost.
And so the question is, what do we lose? What did we lose? And we're trying to figure that out. I think we're in the stage of our culture where we're trying to figure out what we've lost by rejecting so many of the old beliefs that we had for so long that contributed. And this is not, religion contributed to the evolution of society. It was not just a fucking fun-ass story or whatever. It was crucial to the cooperation and, how would you say, the organization of large groups of people. It makes people unified and makes them work together and makes them more pro-social because they think there are consequences for things. And it also helps people to kind of recognize their own group. It's a marker of group too. So it's a very crazy thing to kind of just, have thrown out religion and be like, we don't need it because it wasn't true. That's only one part of what it was a story that we thought was true. So maybe that part is not there anymore, but I think the big question for our culture now is, what else did religion do for us that is not being done anymore, that we have to either figure out a way to go, regardless, we have to figure out a way to replace it if we're not going to actually somehow be able to adopt that back into society using religion, which probably not. I think we're beyond that point now. We have to find a way to replace what religion served for us. And it's more than just oh, it's not true, so throw it out. That's why we can look at this possession story and say, what greater truth is there to ascribing, to describing mental health issues in this spiritual way? What came from that? It's not just that it's not true, because the brain chemistry like this. What else was there? What else did that narrative help? And, that kind of goes back to this idea. Was there an existential aspect to it? Was there some type of spiritual meaning that now we don't lack? I mean, now we lack. So I don't know. And then, you have this oppositional disorder where everything that is an aberration from the norm, which, that's already, you can have problems with that as it is.
I just don't understand what the norm is anymore. If everybody's mentally ill, practically, at what point when 51% of a given society becomes mentally ill, does the norm make sense anymore?
Yeah.
What?
That's a good question.
I don't even know what that is anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to go into at the end of the podcast. It always comes back to Nietzsche. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it this time. It always starts the word of the podcast and it ends with vague references to Nietzsche and me saying I'm not going to get into it. And I won't. But I just think I'm
fine with that.
There's something, I don't know. I'm suspicious of some aspects of modern psychology. I'm suspicious of a system that requires the medication of a vast majority of people. But to be fair, it may not be psychology's fault. It may be the wider world's fault, and they're doing the best they can to keep people alive. So I'm not, who knows? I don't know. I'm not suggesting we ought to go back into believing that Legion has possessed you and all that.
We can't.
I'm not.
That's the thing.
That's important funny thing question. Here. That's a funny question.
No. So that's the Nietzschean idea, though, is that, is it Nietzsche or is it Jung? They both said the same thing, which is there will be a point where we surpass the ability to go back and believe in religion. And if you choose to go back to center your life around religion, you do so, but it's a decrepit kind of religion. So no offense to people that I think that's fine if you're able to believe truly, but we can't have a religious society necessarily anymore.
You can't have secular
people.
It means. Yeah, I understand. You can't have secular people pretending to believe in Jesus and just saying the words and be like, I really do, but they don't. But here's the thing. They are correct. There is one scenario where that is not correct, but it's terrifying. That assumption that society will never come back and be deeply religious assumes that society continues to progress with some level of order and stability and the things that we've come to understand as modern society, like being able to eat from a grocery store. If things get apocalyptic, then I bet you there's not going to be a lot of secular humanists running around in the ashes of the world. There's going to be a deep, maybe there would. Maybe it would just be a bunch of bitter.
No. Actually, I highly doubt it would be because, again, now we come back to one of the central roles that religion played, which was organizing a society and helping people to work together. There's actually this study that looked at, I think it was several hundred communes in the United States. And they categorized them by whether they were religious communes or secular communes, and they checked how successful they were at staying together. And the secular communes, only I think 9% of them
the hell's a secular
managed to
commune?
Survive. They were not organized around religion.
But what is that? Like, what is
a hippie commune? It could have been a hippie commune or some type of something like that. Not a religious one, like a Mormon or whatever, or some shit like that, where they're like, we're gonna go live on our own, and have our own community. The religious communes, 39% of them lasted, and so they did all this categorizing of the different factors that could lead to that. Nothing stuck as to why one would stay around besides the other, except religion. Right. It was the fact that, and it's different because the secular communes, when the leaders or whatever, their groups that were leading and making rules said, we're going to do A, B, and C, everyone said, why would I do A, B, and C? Is that good? There was debate about it. In the religious commune, we're doing A, B, and C because God. Okay, that's done. So that actually shows how crucial and powerful religion can be as a force for keeping a society together and helping it to move in unison forward.
So to some degree, we should be thankful for the fact that we have the material wealth to somewhat function in a secular society with only half of us on drugs to keep us sane. At least that's it. I mean, we're limping ahead there. We're doing the best we can. We should be. This sounds insane. We should be thankful for that, because I think you're right, and I believe instinctually that's right. That if material wealth that we have were to deteriorate, or society were to stop functioning as well as it does, and it does, and we make jokes, but it does still function. I think we would see. I mean, that is my window to street preaching. Like, I'm never going to make it as a street preacher unless the apocalypse comes. Then I'd have my chance. And I don't want the chance. I don't want the shot. I don't want it.
No.
Try to end on a light note, because we always end up with Nietzsche and apocalypse and the destruction of society.
If you don't want to hear about the apocalypse and Nietzsche, then I'm sorry. This is not the podcast for you.
It's not